Hello everyone. First off, spoiler warning to anybody that hasn't seen Thunderbolts. Just want to get that out of the way before we start. But this is my first ever scripted video. So to kick things off, I want to dive straight into the final scenes of the movie with how I thought some things were done well, other things were done poorly. So to kick things off, I'm going to dive into the final scenes of the movie. I'm going to jump straight into the things that I thought that they did well and poorly. First off, I want to say that I've only seen the movie once, so these are just like my general takeaways. I don't really have the best memory, so I only have like a few key focal points here. But first thing I'm going to say off rip, I had some pretty mixed feelings about Yelena's involvement in the plot. Like after Void took over, when I watched the movie and I saw her face her own fears of having to deal with like that child assassin, I was thinking that was probably the tipping point in her life when, you know, it's kind of everything that's built off of that. It's kind of like your focal point for trauma. It's like the worst thing that's happened to you. It's the thing that's going to break you down the most. But my gripes with this were that she kind of just ran through a wall instead of facing her problems. I thought they were going to make her have to, you know, face herself and deal with the problems, because the more that she ran away, the more that she suffered for it. So I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. They're gonna make her face her own problems, and that's just kind of not what ended up happening in the film. She ended up confronting it, but then she kind of just realized that she could run through a wall, so she did that. I thought that the whole point of the film was to touch on mental health struggles, and you know, the last thing that you should do is run away from your problems, because it's not going to fix it. They even say earlier in the movie, they make a joke about burying it. And then by the end of the film, she says that you shouldn't do that. And it's kind of showing two completely different things, which is kind of my problem. It's not the scene itself that I have a problem with. It's more of what it conveys to the audience. So that was my thoughts on that scene specifically. But next up, I want to go into the actual fight scene with Sentry versus Void. I took it as almost like Jungian psychology, like because it's like facing your shadow. You guys have ever played Persona 4? Think about it like the shadows in that game. You know, all the nagging parts in your brain. And just as an example, in the actual film, you said like Void says to Sentry something about how his teammates don't actually care about him and all of this kind of stuff. I was thinking like that really hit home with the way that, you know, your shadow actually works. Sounds very realistic. Sounds like something that somebody could actually struggle with. Because, I mean, you know, sometimes you feel like the people around you aren't really there to support you, even though they are. It's just something that can happen. So, I thought it was a pretty realistic thing. I thought that was a very cool take on Jungian psychology. But now, another thing that I liked a lot was when he was fighting his shadow, it started to take over him. Like, when he was fighting Void, it started to take over his leg, and then started consuming his whole body, and I almost took that as him being consumed by his negative thoughts. And I thought that was a pretty cool take on it, because it's showing what can happen if you just try to fight your problems instead of tackling them in a healthy way, which I thought was also very good. But my gripe started to get in when they kind of all just broke out and started hugging him. Kind of just like, alright, that's not going to magically fix your problems. Like, yeah, having support in your life definitely helps. I would agree with that. But it's not going to be the instant thing that's going to make you get out of something like that. You know, you kind of need to help yourself. And, I mean, I didn't really like the way that the film handled that, just because when you are going through a mental health struggle, yeah, you should lean on people, but you also need to rely on yourself. You're the only person you're carrying through this life. So you can't just make other people help you. And because the problem with that is that you're never going to get good at relying on yourself for dealing with your problems. You're going to feel like you constantly need support, and that being alone isn't a good thing. It's like, I'm not saying in everybody's situation that you shouldn't. I think that you absolutely, if you're in a rough spot, should lean on people. But they also can't understand what's going on in your head. You can tell them as much as you want, but you kind of need to deal with those demons yourself. I mean, people can help you, they can talk to you, they can talk you through problems, which is sometimes useful. But once again, when you're all alone, you're alone with your thoughts. And I think that that's something that people should be taught about, because I think it's very important that people are okay with their own thoughts and can work around them even when they're difficult. I feel like that's a very important thing to have. Another gripe that I had is that Sentry was kind of wishy-washy the whole film, like couldn't really make up his mind. I mean, more toward the end when he became Sentry, which could have been because his shadow was nagging at him more because he realized that he had this power. And then normally it's when you get something that those kinds of thoughts pop up. It's because you feel like you're in an advantageous position and you want to push it. And I feel like that's probably what was going through Sentry's head. But I feel like it would have made a lot more sense if he had something going on or something that would make him so wishy-washy, instead of trying to help 1 second and then trying to wipe them out the next second and he can't make up his goddamn mind. But my theory behind this is that maybe they're going to use him in another film as an antagonist, and that's why they didn't make him deal with all of his problems and stuff like that, because they want him to seem like a loose cannon, which is like, alright. I've also not read anything about Sentry in the comics before anybody says anything, but yeah, that's kind of all I really gotta say. This is kind of just my call into the void to see if anybody feels the same way, thinks the same way about the film. But anyways, thank you so much for listening. You guys have an absolutely marvelous rest of your day. Have a good one.